And welcome to another edition of The Locker Room, where the BS stops and the analysis starts. And we are your three top-of-the-line hosts, Kyle Anderson.
It's Brandon Jones live in the locker room.
Matt Hirsch right here in the locker room.
And the Locker Room is brought to you by Rammer Jammer Beer. Go to rammerjammerbeerco.com to buy t-shirts, koozies, and find out where it's being sold. Tonight, talking about one of, definitely Brandon's favorite subjects, the NFL. We're going to talk about the season, what happened, things that transpired, and some of the big stories that's starting to break now, and get Matt's opinion, Brandon's opinion, and mine, so we can actually give you top-notch opinion, not the crap you hear everywhere else. So, guys, we're going to go ahead and start off. Season's over. Baltimore Ravens, Super Bowl champions. Ray Lewis going out, retiring with 2 Super Bowl rings.
Yep.
After watching the game, what did y'all think of the Super Bowl? What was your opinion?
It was one of the best, without a doubt. There for a little while, it looked like it was going to be kind of boring, of course. It looked like that the Ravens are going to walk away with it. Nobody's going to talk about this 10 years from now. But the power outage and then the 49ers comeback after the power outage made it a classic, without a doubt. It's one of the best. It ranks up there. I don't want to say it's one of the absolute best, but it's up there with a St. Louis, Tennessee type of game.
I'm with Matt. I'm a little bit biased. I'm a Ravens fan. I was really excited and got worried, then got really, really worried, and then I was pulling my hair out. But I was glad to see Ray Lewis go out on top. For so many years, yes.
That's our other sponsor.
Your solo. For so many years, the Ravens have been close. Last year, dropped pass away from Super Bowl. How many years have we bumped into Pittsburgh in the playoffs? So for many years we've been close. I was just relieved to see us finally get there and win it.
I was kind of leaning towards the Ravens as well because I really like Ozzie Newsome, being an Alabama guy. He's really put together a solid team every year, year in, year out. If they don't make the Super Bowl or not, they're always in the discussion. And that's something that it's good to see him win another one.
And besides Ray Lewis, being the big winner in all of this, I guess the other one you really have to say is Joe Flacco. He walks away. Finally, they finalize their contract. He's
getting paid is what he's doing.
Yeah. He's the Super Bowl MVP, and now he's going to be the most highest paid player in NFL history. I mean, what did they say? He's guaranteed over $60 million.
You can buy Six Flags.
Yeah, I don't know who would want to, but still though, he could buy Birmingham. Of course, that's not saying much. We'll pick another city. But, that, and it's so funny, too, because a couple of weeks before that, here comes Tom Brady, and he gets a new contract. So, and then Brady's basically saying he's probably going to play maybe another 3 or 4 years, and then he's going to retire. But he's guaranteed now over $56 million. So, the question I want to ask you guys is, first of all, how do y'all feel about the Flacco deal? Do you think he's worth every penny, or do you think, hey, the Ravens may have gone a little overboard?
Look, man, I'm going to tell you like this. People sleep on Joe Flacco. I think people get, because of the offense that you're in and you put up mass numbers, they get that twisted because Joe Flacco has an all-pro running back. We drafted Bernard Pierce, who's going to be an all-pro running back. You have a defense that's consistently ranked in the top 5 in the NFL. So Joe Flacco isn't asked to do what Tom Brady does. Tom Brady's never really had a real game changer at the running back position. The New England Patriots defenses have always been a little bit shaky if you take away that 2001 Super Bowl year. Even with Drew Brees, the New Orleans Saints defenses are awful. And he really didn't have a running game. You look at these players, Peyton Manning, when he was at Indianapolis, he had some nice pass rushers, but the Colts defenses as a whole weren't all that swell. Joe Flacco isn't asked to do a lot. But we talk about arm strength and where he can put the ball. Very few people can make the throws that he makes.
I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't know if he was asked, like the Patriots asked Tom Brady or the Colts, now the Broncos, ask Peyton Manning to do to actually do as much as they do. I don't know if he could handle it. I don't know. It's yet to be seen. I can't say that he wouldn't, but I think he's not necessarily an upper echelon quarterback. I think he's good. He's very, very good. He might be the top of the solid quarterbacks, I guess.
Well, and the other part of that, too, looking at the other team in the Super Bowl, the 49ers, it was also announced that Alex Smith, he was the guy that was the darling all the way last year and then through this year, and then he gets that concussion. Colin Kaepernick steps back in, and he doesn't get his job back. And now it was announced that he's being traded to the Kansas City Chiefs, where Andy Reid is now. So in that instance, too...
The Chiefs are where players go to die.
Well, that is true.
Yes. It's the
Now,
Bermuda Triangle of the NFL.
That's really it. And I think that's where Alex Smith is going. I think Kaepernick, and we've discussed this off air. We discussed it on air with the episode that didn't make it. Basically, that Kaepernick reminds me of Cam Newton, but with a better team around him.
Yes, definitely. Kaepernick has skills, man. I've been impressed with him since I watched him when he was playing out at Nevada, and they were causing some big teams some problems. Beat Boise State when Boise State was headed toward a national title. So I've always been impressed.
While we're making comparisons, I think Joe Flacco reminds me. We're talking about Brady back in the Patriots back in 2001. We were talking about this Super Bowl being compared to kind of like the Rams and the Titans. Flacco does remind me a lot of Kurt Warner. He really does.
Now, speaking of Colin Kaepernick, great arm, great running speed, good decision making, very good quarterback. Then you look also at Robert Griffin III, good running. He kind of got banged up this year, but you cannot deny the guy can throw. He's a game changer. And then you look at some of the other quarterbacks. Are we starting to see a kind of a changing of the guard? Are we starting to see now that the dual threat quarterbacks are starting to make their claim that, look, you can get to the Super Bowl and we can lead you to the promised land, whereas in the past it was always looked at as, well, you're more of a risk than you are a positive because you could get hurt a lot easier.
I've always liked dual threat quarterbacks, but even when you turn on ESPN or the NFL Network, the pundits love the Statue of Liberty. They love the 6'5" guy that can't move. And anytime you bring up a guy that can move around, Trent Dilfer, Merrill Hodge, the rest of the guys are going to jump all over. People still believe that in this league, you win with a drop back guy. And, I think it's going to depend on the quarterback himself. I'm not going to say, drop back or a dual threat. But I do believe that a lot of traditionalist guys don't like the dual threat quarterback.
Well, the thing is, drop back quarterback, there's an element of patience there that a dual threat quarterback might not have. He might be a little quick to jump the gun, literally, and take off past the line of scrimmage, where a drop back passer is going to do a little bit more of sitting back there and reading the defense, which I think that thought process is what professional coaches and GMs are really looking for. Now, why are there so many of them now? I think it's basically it's time. You look back a few years ago, even a year or so ago, we're sitting here talking about the spread in college. We had a show where we spent a lot of time talking about the spread in college. Well, now those quarterbacks, that's what the college game gave to the NFL. That's what's the natural progression. That's what's there. So because there's so many of them, yeah, we're going to see them in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
It's just what's going to happen.
And then also to build off of that,
are we going to see one win a Super Bowl? That's the real question.
Yeah, and the thing that really kind of catapults it that, hey, this is the wave of the future is now you've got Chip Kelly leaving Oregon to go be the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and a lot of people are saying, hey, he's actually going to bring this style to Philadelphia. And for a lot of players, kind of like, McCaleb from Auburn, very short, he's a scat back, but he's quick, where most teams would say, hey, I'm probably going to go ahead and use you as like a kick returner or like a punt returner, Now he actually could be a starting running back and used in his system. Do you think that you will see a lot of teams start going to that spread the field, fast-paced offense, or do you think, no, this is still the NFL and that's just not going to work?
It's still the NFL, and Chip Kelly, if he doesn't make some changes to his game, which people say that he will. Chip Kelly's a football guy. He lives, breathes, football. He's an unmarried guy. Doesn't have a family of his own, so he's able to dedicate a lot of time to football. If he comes with the same offense that he ran at Oregon, you're going to see what Stanford did to it, what LSU did to it, happen on a larger scale in the National Football League.
But you look at running backs he had at Oregon, and they've been relatively successful in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, LeGarrette Blount. There's a couple more. Help me out with these guys.
Oh, you got
me on that one.
You got LeGarrette Blount. You have my man over in San Francisco.
Was it Thomas?
No.
That's who they had
Thomas.
this year.
It's not Thomas. Oh man, how could I forget his name? LaMichael James. You have LaMichael James. He also had an Ontario Smith. He's had some running backs to come through there.
So I guess the question for him would be quarterbacks, not necessarily running backs, because he's had running backs that have been successful in the league.
I don't think the most impressive one that he's probably had might be Jonathan Stewart. So he's had his fair share of running backs to make it to the NFL, to do something, do well in the NFL. He hadn't really had that quarterback. He had Joey. He wasn't there when Joey Harrison was there. Chip Kelly didn't get to Oregon until late in Bellatti's career, so he didn't get Joey Harrison. He really hadn't had a standout quarterback. Darren Thomas could have been one, but someone talked him into leaving school early, which was an idiotic move. So, I mean, we'll see what Chip does. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Now, the Combine is officially over. Saw a lot of players go out there really impressed. We saw some that, didn't really do much, but we don't really think it's going to hurt their stock. Looking at the Combine, some of the stories. One of the stories I wanted to get you guys your response on. Utah's defensive tackle. This is the one that you were telling us about, Brandon, at the beginning of the year.
Star
Lutella, I guess that's how you say his name, but he's supposed to be one of the top prospects. Well, he goes to the Combine, and then the doctors say they discover he's got a heart condition.
Heart condition, yeah.
And so now there are people saying they don't. A lot of people thought he was going to be the number one pick. Now they don't know. I mean, have y'all heard? Has anybody heard? I haven't heard anything since the Combine about it.
They're still looking at different doctors. He's going to kind of see, gauge are there risk. First, is confirm the problem. What are the risks? Is he able to have a career in the NFL? And if he's not, I told you guys about this guy at the beginning of the summer. This guy was one of the most dominant defensive tackles that you never heard of. I think him and Kasim Green from Rutgers were the most dominant defensive players in college football that no one ever heard of. And I think it'll just be a sad story if he's not able to live out his dream in the NFL.
Brandon, how does a player like Star and like this
Kasim
Green at Rutgers, how do they? I know these are still major college programs, but how do they fly under the radar where they could be big names in the NFL, but they don't end up at a program that's competing necessarily for a national championship, like an Alabama or an LSU or an Oklahoma or a USC? How does a player like that go to a Utah or Rutgers?
I mean, you look at it like this. When we talk about football recruiting, different players peak at different times. Sometimes you might recruit a 5-star, and that 5-star is as good as he's going to get by the time he's 16 or 17 years old. All right, you have a lot of kids that are 2-star, 3-star, and they don't peak until they're 19 or 20. And that's what you get a lot of. And a lot of it, honestly, is going to be geographics. Star, if I read his story correctly, he didn't start playing football until he was a junior in high school. And Kasim Green is from New York. Well,
Rutgers is right there.
Yeah. So it's like there's not a lot of people going up to New York to get football talent, and he was one of those ones. Remember, Greg Schiano was at Rutgers, did a great job of recruiting in the New York, New Jersey area. Did. So I mean, that's how you get a lot of those guys. I mean, honestly, it's parity.
You figure out New York metro area, you've got Rutgers and Syracuse really.
And you have to look at it like this from a recruiting standpoint. There are more college prospects coming out now than ever before. Usually you would go to a high school, you have 2 or 3 guys that are going to play college ball. Now you have high schools that are signing in excess of 12 or more guys. So with that parity, you're going to have people going to, different schools and, falling down to some of the lower division schools also.
Now, the other 2 big stories coming out of the Combine, some people would say they're kind of controversial. I don't know. I wanted to get both your opinion and Matt's opinion on this. The first thing, Colorado tight end Nick Casa was telling ESPN Radio in Denver that during the interviews with the team officials, he said at the Combine in Indianapolis that some of the teams would ask you, like, do you have a girlfriend? Are you married? Do you like girls? Now the NFL says, they're looking into it because according to that, it does violate some federal and state laws that you're not allowed to ask about people's sexual orientation. You're not allowed to ask about certain things in their personal life. How much of this do you think was, okay, this may have happened, and how much of it was, I don't really think it happened because you're just saying this so now people will know who you are? Because nobody else is really coming out saying anything like this.
There's been a few players that come out to say the same thing.
Now, do you think if this is true, what kind of repercussions do you think there would be, if any?
I don't know. I mean, you got to think, man, these off-kilter questions have been bounced around the Combine for a while. Look at what they asked Dez Bryant about his mom. And that was stepping way over the line.
You look at the questions and how it progresses, not to read into it too much, but, the do you like girls, that's pretty straightforward and I guess could be considered offensive. But, do you have a girlfriend? Are you married? That's not necessarily, we're just trying to know a little bit more about you, try to make, interview a little bit more lighthearted. You got a wife, you got kids. That's normal. We've all been in interviews before. That's kind of normal. It's not really overreaching, I would think, especially with these young guys that these are people that want to try to mentor these guys. Do you have a girlfriend? Have you thought about how you're going to manage your money? Especially, you thought about having a family? That would be a more natural progression. But then when you go to, do you like girls? That's a little weird.
Yeah,
that's kind of a strange question.
Now, the other big story, of course, a lot of people feel like this may have been a publicity stunt. 28-year-old Lauren Silberman, she was a graduate student at MIT and an ex-club soccer player in Wisconsin, was telling the NFL Network that she could boot 60-yard field goals and was ready to take on the Combine, be the first woman to ever be at the Combine. She goes out on the New York Jets practice field and kicks 2 kickoffs that don't get more than 5 yards off the ground, and apparently in the first one she strained her quad, tried to play through it, and injured herself, and that was it. She was done. How much of that, and a lot of people, and even female reporters that were there covering it, felt like, what is this? We just got completely shammed. Was this just some sort of a statement? Was this you're trying to get press for yourself? How much of that do you think really had a lot to do with, no, she was really injured, or did you guys get a feeling like, hey, something's going on here, this doesn't seem right?
I'll take attention from any dumbass that's willing to give it to me.
Right.
So if I can sell you any type of story, you buy into it, and you get the hype wagon behind it. If you're going to give me the attention, guess what? I'm going to be famous for something.
Are you talking about Manti Te'o?
Maybe, but that's probably the mentality that she took. I mean, I don't know, man. It's kind of different.
That's a mentality that's kind of prevalent in society today.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I think that y'all both hit the nail on the head talking about this girl as well as Manti Te'o. So
now looking back over the season, a lot happened. This was probably one of those seasons where numerous stories. What stories jump out at you the most that will be the most remembered about this season?
Oh, the probably the 2 big ones starting out that it's hard to even believe it was the same season was Bountygate with the Saints. They didn't have a lot of their players and coaches throughout a lot of the season. And then the referee strike, the referee lockout to begin the year.
And it's amazing, too, like you said, that all happened in the same year. And both of them very controversial, especially the Bounty Gate, as Brandon had said. There's a lot of things that, especially I know Outside the Lines from ESPN was running a story where I cannot think of the player's name, but he actually was saying, hey, on that tape where Goodell is saying it's me, it isn't me. It's this other player. And there's still a lot of things going on, like, hey, look, I lost 8 games without pay. How am I supposed to get that money back? And I think you're right. Those are probably two of the biggest ones. One of the ones I think that always will come to my mind has to be the tragic story of Javon Belcher. I mean, that was just horrible, for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's just because it really that really just made you go, how does this happen? Right. And then you start hearing more and more facts, and then he kills his wife his daughter's mother in front of her and in front of his own mother. It's just tragic, but. Is there any other stories that jump out at you, Brandon?
I would say the play of this rookie class of quarterbacks, along with the young guy, Colin Kaepernick, RG3 Sticks, Andrew Luck. People sleep on Ryan Tannehill. He silently had a pretty good year.
Yeah.
Tannehill. Man, who else I'm missing? Tannehill, the kid up in Cleveland, Wheaton. He had a rough year, but he started, getting it together.
Wilson.
Russell Wilson, you cannot forget him.
Mm-hmm.
And just that Seattle team as a whole, I would tell you, Richard Sherman is the best corner in the NFL right now.
I would totally agree.
Richard Sherman is the best corner in the NFL right now.
Going back to the play of the rookie quarterbacks, does that mean that last year's draft class was another 1983, where it had all those great quarterbacks that came out of it?
I'm not ready to, compare any class to that '83 class.
Okay,
that's kind of tough.
That's the benchmark.
Now, looking forward to the draft, I mean, it's hard. Sometimes you can pick who they're going to take, and then some days it's like, all right, I did not think you were going to take him. Who do you see as probably being, okay, if I had a pick in the NFL draft, this would be my number one pick?
I don't know. What about you, Matthew?
I don't know. I wish we had a homework assignment to really think about that one.
If I had to pick, it would be either Mingo from LSU, Alec Ogletree from Georgia. I know he has a lot of baggage off the field problems, but Alec Ogletree from Georgia, and my next one would be if I had to take one, it'll probably be D. Miller.
I'm leaning towards Miller. I mean, I can't think of any running backs or quarterbacks out of this class that I really want.
The offensive tackle from Texas A&M, either him or my man down in Alabama.
Warmack?
Yes.
Warmack, I think, is definitely the one thing I'm surprised is Barrett Jones, because he's played all three positions on the line. But like you guys said, it's when you get to the pros, it's you got to be smart, you got to be able to play your position. But Womack, the player from A&M, those guys are really, really strong, really, really good. I think Barrett Jones will do good. I don't know how high he'll go, but I think he helps the stock being able to play all those positions.
The thing you were talking about, Mingo, I was watching the combine, and Mingo and Montgomery did not necessarily have the best combines.
Mm-hmm.
So that might, does that hurt their draft stock?
I think the thing about the combine is this: when it all boils down to it, can you play football or can't you play football? Because we all met those combine giants that do well in the combine, but can't play a lick of football. So we'll see.
That wraps it up for the NFL. Come back. We're going to talk college basketball. Brandon's going to tell us what he thinks about the new Big East, and Matt's also going to tell us what he thinks of the SEC.
The SEC plays basketball?